Hey, what's happening, everybody? Wanted to do just an arrow build video. I know that there's a lot of videos out there, but sometimes some of the videos will actually talk about things from like a really high-end perspective. So if you're brand new to building arrows, I kind of wanted to just break it down, show you step by step. It's actually something fun to do. I enjoy doing it myself, and it's not that intimidating. There's a lot of tools that are out there from the jigs, and you have a bunch of different options, and it gives you a nice way to play with a bunch of different stuff. Like if you go to an archery shop, you might get a half dozen arrows or get a dozen arrows. Doing it yourself, you can try different color combinations or maybe a different configuration of vanes. So what we're going to do is I'm starting out with 5mm Easton axis arrows. These are 300 spined. For the poundage of the bow that I'm shooting, these fly really well for me. Now, something else that I'm doing is I'm doing a 4 Fletch, which I'll show you here in a second. Basically is going to look like this right here. So this is something that I picked up through John Dudley and Knock on TV. These are much smaller profile, which I like because I use an adjustable sight. So as that sight housing comes down, it allows me to actually shoot a little bit further distance without having to worry about the fletchings actually hitting, that housing of that sight, the sight housing itself. So really cool. Having 4 vanes, it really seems to stabilize the arrow really well. I run an arrow wrap on mine. Total personal preference. For me, one, I like the color combination, but 2, it also gives me a good indication if I have a pass through on what kind of color I have. If it's dark red to real deep red, it can be liver to muscle. If it's pink and bubbly, then it's lung. If it's green brown, then it's guts. And a lot of that's just going to tell you more about how long you need to wait, stuff like that. I also run lighted Nocks on all my arrows. These are from Lumenok. Awesome, made in the USA company, right in Yates City, Illinois. Just matching up the colors. I went with green and green, but I've got a couple of them here that they also make in this size for this 205 inside diameter. So they've got a pink, a green, and an orange. And I'll tell you a little trick on the pink. You can actually take a red Sharpie and just color over top of it, and you'll have a red knock. I've done it, and it works pretty cool, and it'll light up red for you. So anyways, we're gonna get started right now. First thing, I've got these arrows already cut. Now that is something that I had to do at the bow shop because I don't have my own arrow saw. So I went to F6 Outdoors and Jamie cut these for me. And we're going to start with an arrow wrap. Adhesive side up. I like doing this on a mouse pad or anything flat that has a little bit of cushion to it. Make sure you identify what's going to be the front, the business end of the arrow and the back end of the arrow. But I line it up, get as close as I can, make sure I have an even gap on there. Once I'm there, a little bit of down pressure is all you're going to do. Is just apply a little bit of down pressure into that padding and just roll it slowly. Go down your seam line and just make sure that that adhesive adheres really good, because it should lay on top of itself. I'm going to go ahead and insert the Lumenok, the lighted knock, on there. Make sure it's working good on this one. I've got a good connection. Sometimes if the arrow is not cut properly and it's uneven, you won't get a good contact on there. So I'm just going to move this out of the way for now. Now I use a Bitzenberg fletching jig, and actually if you order these straight from a guy like John Dudley, it'll actually come and he'll have it already set up for the 2.5 degree helical on that four Fletch. Companies, they have a 3 Fletch, the easy quick jigs and stuff like that. They work really well. Now, use a primer pin. This one, this tack vanes primer pin. It's probably like an alcohol type solvent of some sort. I don't know if there's another chemical in here, but what it does is it just kind of cleans these veins and gets it ready to go and prepared, ready for the glue. It just helps with a lot of the adhesion. A lot of times during the printing process and whenever they mold these, vinyls and plastics and rubbers can release some chemicals that they're made out of, and sometimes it's kind of oily, so you might not get a good glue set. Take one of these into the jig. There's designated marks in here, so that way you can always consistently line it up the right way every time. This glue is the Steel Force Beyond Bond. So you know it's got to be good if it says Beyond Bond on it. But I started using this glue last year and I haven't had any issues with any of the veins that I've put together. You definitely want to make sure you get an even coverage, but it's not something where you need to completely gob it on. So when you push this in, it just ends up squirting out everywhere and you end up making a mess. So the Bitzenberg has a magnet which will line you up. You just want to keep positioning it on there and making sure that you have even pressure. Once that's set, the magnet's going to hold it in place, and then you're going to wait. A lot of times people will recommend that you should wait 10 minutes or so on each vein. I'm impatient, so I end up usually, seems like I wait about a minute and a half, and then I unclamp it and I roll to the next, and like I said, I've never had any issues. Alright, so we've had this sitting on here almost 2 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and just squeeze to unclamp it, pull that off. Now, another good habit is just to wipe that out. Sometimes you'll, like I said, you'll get a little glue that wants to squirt out, and you'll end up gluing your clamp together. Now, like I said, this jig is already set, so I don't want to move this arrow. All I'm going to do is turn this dial on the bottom, and you can feel when it hits one of the detents that's built in there. Once it hits, it's locked in. I know that my spacing is going to be consistent on all 4 veins. Set the new vein in. Repeat the process. Put a thin bead of glue in. Just make sure that you've got a good even coverage. I'm going to turn this back around so I can see it. So I'm going to make contact, but I'm not going to push it down all the way yet. I'm going to make sure that I'm even, and then I'm just going to keep on pushing down till I have equal pressure. And the way that these veins, the way that they're made, they're almost cupped. And that's going to be your contact point. So whenever you push that this clamp down, you're basically just flattening that out, and you're increasing the surface contact where that glue is going to make a good adhesion onto that arrow. Alright, so we've got this arrow completely done. You can see I've got all 4 veins on here. Now, one of the things that I like to do, I've done this forever. Somebody showed it to me. I think that it actually works. But these fletchings, they're going through body cavities, or they're in and out of your quiver. They do take a little bit of abuse sometimes, especially on western hunts. I take one small dab of glue and I put right on the front of each one. Then I'll come back to the back side and do the exact same thing. And it's just a dot I'm doing on the backs of the front and the back of each of these. If I have any excess between, I will go ahead and wipe that. Be careful, because it is like super glue and you can you can stick your fingers back together. But basically this one here is nearly done. Now Easton has a Broadhead adapter ring for these arrows. For the Easton Axis 5mm, it's a bar 5 is the size on it, but basically it fits right over top and you just press it in. Gives you a nice solid surface, adds a little bit of structure onto the end of this arrow, depending on what broadhead that you're running. So just gives it a nice firm placement. You're not going to have any damage. Also, the way that these inserts is, this is an insert that actually sits down inside here, whereas some inserts have the lip over the top, or some are even an outsert that's actually sticking out a little further. So they have these broadhead adapter rings. And then basically this arrow here is completely done. Couple of things that I just want to go over. Whenever you're setting a Lumenok, you know, they use a contact point, so that metal's going to make contact with that carbon. If your arrows are not cut smooth and good, don't worry. There are squaring jigs that you can use. Lumenok even makes one. It's called a fast square, I believe is what it's called, F-A-S-T. But basically, you'll set it in the tray, and you'll rotate your arrow, and it's just has a little bit of sandpaper, and it'll actually just make sure that you've got a good, smooth, flat surface on there, and that makes all the difference. Sometimes you have arrows that already have painted graphics on them, and that paint will be over top of the carbon, and that is enough to keep you from having a good contact and getting, you know, a light up, you know, on your Nocks. So that's another one where you'd want to use kind of a squaring just to get rid of that paint, to make sure that you have a good contact point, and that way you'll have a lighted Nock every time. That's it. Pretty simple arrow building video. The idea was I wasn't going to try to go in and get really complex and talk about the coefficient of friction of any type of materials or anything like that. That wasn't the purpose of it. I wanted to make something to show you how easy it is. You know, a lot of times there's videos out there where people talk on a high level, and I don't know if they're really wanting to teach you something or they're just wanting to sound really, really smart. So I wanted to do a simple video to show people it's not that hard. You can do this yourself, and by doing it yourself, you actually give yourself some other options and some flexibility, and you can try new things, different color combinations. I like different, I'm kind of set in my ways. There's certain colors that I like to match up, and this year, you know, I'm kind of going with the all white, you know, same color. Again, doing the 4 Fletch and a smaller size vane, you know, having a cocked vane, so to speak, is irrelevant to me, because this profile is just so small compared to like a full-size blazer vane or something like that. So anyways, hope you liked the video. If you like other gear review videos, there's been a couple of bow build videos, there's some gun videos, and there's actually a lot of hunting videos as well. So thanks for watching.